The Grand Assembly Hall was the largest room Tai-Ho had ever seen. It floated in the middle of space on Station Varus, a place where all species came to talk instead of fight. Giant windows showed the stars outside. Thousands of aliens sat in curved rows that went up toward the ceiling like stairs. Every species in the known galaxy had sent someone to watch today. Tai-Ho stood alone on the speaking platform. He was 34 years old, tall for a human, with a calm face that never showed what he was thinking. He wore the simple black uniform of Earth's diplomatic service. Behind him, standing very still against the wall, was Yuna. She was his security guard. She was 29, with sharp eyes that moved slowly across the room, watching everything. Humanity had joined the Galactic Assembly only 12 years ago. To most aliens, humans were babies. They were a young species from a small planet in a quiet corner of the galaxy. Nobody thought they mattered very much. Today, the Villani Empire was demanding 3 human colony worlds. The Villani were insects. They stood 8 feet tall, on 4 legs, with 2 arms that ended in sharp claws. Their bodies were covered in hard shell that looked like black armor. Their eyes were large and made of many small parts, like a fly's eyes. For 3,000 years, the Villani had taken whatever they wanted. Nobody had ever stopped them. Commander Brix was the one speaking for the Villani today. He was the most feared military leader in their empire. His black shell was covered in scars from 100 battles. When he spoke, his voice was like rocks grinding together. The Kepler worlds belonged to the Villani Empire, Brix said. His words echoed through the hall. Our ancestors claimed that space 10,000 years before humans crawled out of their caves. You will leave those planets. You will leave them now. This is not a request. The aliens in the audience watched quietly. Many of them had seen this before. The Villani would make demands. The smaller species would bow their heads and obey. That was how the galaxy worked. Tai-Ho did not bow his head. Commander Brix, he said. His voice was calm and clear. I have documents here that prove our legal right to settle those worlds. The Villani abandoned that sector 2,000 years ago. Under assembly law, abandoned territory can be claimed by any species that develops it. We have developed it. The worlds are ours. A soft sound moved through the hall. Whispers shock. A young species was arguing with the Villani Empire. Some aliens leaned forward in their seats. This was unexpected. Brix's many eyes focused on Tai-Ho. For a long moment, he did not move. Then he made a sound that might have been a laugh. Documents, he said. Laws. These are games that weak species play. The Villani do not play games. We take. That is our law. Then your law is wrong, Tai-Ho said. The hall went completely silent. Even the air seemed to stop moving. High Counselor Mira, the old gray-skinned Selvian who ran the assembly, gripped her chair with thin fingers. She had been doing this job for 60 years. She had never heard anyone speak to a Villani like that. Commander Brix moved forward. His 4 legs carried him across the platform with terrible speed. He was 3 times Tai-Ho's size. His shadow fell over the human like a dark cloud. You dare, Brix said. His voice was quiet now, which was somehow worse than when he shouted. You are an insect. Your entire species is an insect. You have been in space for 200 years. We have ruled for 30,000. You are nothing. Tai-Ho looked up at him. He did not step back. He did not look away. We are the representatives of Earth, he said. And we do not give away what belongs to our people. Brix raised his arm. Every alien in the hall knew what was coming. Yuna's hand moved toward her weapon, but Tai-Ho gave her a tiny signal with his fingers. Stop. Wait. The blow came fast. Brix's armored hand struck Tai-Ho across the face. The sound was like a gunshot. It echoed off the walls and ceiling. Tai-Ho's head snapped to the side. Blood flew from his lip and splashed on the white floor. In the culture of almost every alien species, this moment meant something important. A strike to a diplomat's face was a statement. It said, "You are beneath me." It said, "Submit or face war." For 10,000 years, smaller species had submitted. They had bowed. They had begged. They had given everything the Villani demanded. Taiho did not fall. He stood exactly where he was. Slowly, very slowly, he turned his head back to face Commander Brix. Blood ran down his chin in a thin red line. It dripped onto his black uniform, and then Taiho smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was not a scared smile. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting for this moment. It was the smile of a species that had fought itself for 10,000 years before it ever reached the stars. It was the smile of humanity. The aliens in the hall felt something they did not understand. It was a strange feeling in their stomachs. Some of them would later realize it was fear, but not fear of the Villani. Fear of the small creature that had just been struck and had smiled. Commander Brix's many eyes blinked. He had hit thousands of aliens in his life. They had all reacted the same way. They fell, they cried, they begged. This human was doing none of those things. "You have 6 seconds to apologize," Taiho said. His voice was still calm. Still clear, but there was something under it now. Something old and dangerous. Something that had survived ice ages, plagues, and world wars. Something that had never learned how to surrender. High Counselor Mira gripped her chair so hard her fingers hurt. Yuna's eyes were fixed on the Villani guards across the room. The entire galaxy was watching through cameras that broadcast to 1 trillion screens. Commander Brix laughed. It was a harsh, ugly sound. 6 seconds. He said, "And then what, little human? What will you do?" Taiho's smile grew wider. "Count," he said, "and find out." The first second began with Commander Brix laughing. The sound filled the Grand Assembly Hall like thunder. His huge body shook with amusement. Around the room, his guards relaxed. This was familiar. This was how things always went. The small species made threats. The Villani crushed them. Simple. Brix raised his armored hand again. This time, he would not just slap the human. He would break him. He would show the entire galaxy what happened when insects forgot their place. His arm began to swing down toward Taiho's head with enough force to crack stone. This was the first second. The second belonged to Yuna, to the aliens watching. She simply disappeared. One moment she was standing against the wall, still as a statue. The next moment, she was gone. Their eyes could not track her. Their minds could not understand what was happening. Humans did not look dangerous. They were soft. They had no claws, no armor, no poison. They were small and weak compared to most species. What the aliens did not know was that humans came from Earth, and Earth was a death world. On Earth, everything tried to kill you. The weather could freeze you or burn you. The animals had teeth and claws and venom. Even the smallest creatures could end your life. Humans had survived this nightmare for 200,000 years. They had evolved to be something special. Their reflexes were faster than almost any species in the galaxy. Their bodies could push beyond normal limits when danger came. They called it adrenaline. Yuna moved through the air like a ghost. Before the second ended, she had reached the 2 Villani guards standing closest to the platform. Her hands found their weapons. She twisted. The guns fell from their claws and clattered on the floor. The guards looked down at their empty hands with confusion. They had not even seen her coming. The 3rd second brought fear to the assembly hall. Every alien in the room saw what Yuna had done. They saw how fast she moved. Faster than their eyes could follow. Faster than anything they had ever seen. The Villani were supposed to be the most dangerous species in the galaxy. But this small human female had just disarmed 2 of their warriors like they were children. Whispers filled the hall. What was happening? What were these creatures? The Renari delegates, small gray beings who had served the Villani for 1,000 years, leaned forward in their seats. Their hearts beat fast with something they had not felt in generations. Hope. The 4th second changed everything. Commander Brix's arm was still coming down. It was going to hit Taiho's skull and end his life. But Taiho moved. His hand came up and caught Brix's wrist. The sound of impact was like 2 rocks smashing together. Brix's compound eyes went wide. He pushed harder. He was Villani. He had crushed metal with these hands. He had torn through walls. No species had ever matched his strength. But Tai-Ho held him. The human's arm did not shake. His feet did not slide backward. He stood like he was made of iron, holding the arm of a creature 3 times his size. Sweat appeared on his forehead. Veins stood out on his neck. But he did not move. What the Villani did not know was that humans had dense bones, heavy muscles, hearts that could pump blood so hard it would kill most other species. Humans were built for endurance. They were built to survive. They were built to fight things bigger than themselves and win. The 5th second brought the thunder. Tai-Ho twisted his body. He used Brix's own strength against him. It was a technique humans had developed thousands of years ago, back when they fought each other with hands and feet instead of guns. They called it many names in many languages. The idea was simple. Use your enemy's power to destroy them. Commander Brix, 8 feet of armored shell and muscle, flew through the air. His legs left the ground. His body spun, and then he hit the floor with a crash that echoed through the entire station. The platform cracked beneath him. Pieces of broken stone flew in all directions. The Grand Assembly Hall had stood for 6,000 years. It had seen treaties signed and wars declared. It had seen empires rise and fall. But it had never seen anything like this. A human, a creature from a young and ignored species, had just thrown the most feared warrior in the Villani. Empire to the ground like garbage. The 6th second was silence. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The aliens stared at the scene before them with eyes and mouths open wide. High Counselor Mira's gray face had gone pale. Her hands trembled on her chair. Tai-Ho stood over Commander Brix. He still held the alien's arm. His foot pressed down on Brix's chest, holding him against the broken floor. Blood still dripped from Tai-Ho's cut lip, falling onto Brix's black shell like red rain. "Your 6 seconds are over," Tai-Ho said. His voice was not loud, but everyone in the hall heard it. "You did not apologize." Brix struggled. He twisted and pulled, but Tai-Ho's grip did not break. The human held him down with strength that should have been impossible. Around the room, Villani guards raised their weapons, but they hesitated. Una stood among them now, somehow having moved again without anyone seeing. She held 2 of their own guns, pointed at their commanders. Her face showed no fear. Only patience. "What is happening?" One of the alien delegates whispered. "I do not know," another answered. "But I think we have made a terrible mistake about these humans." High Counselor Mira finally found her voice. "It came out weak and shaky, Ambassador Tai-Ho," she said. "What have you done?" Tai-Ho looked up at her. His smile was gone now. His face was serious, calm. The face of a man who knew exactly what came next. "I answered," he said simply. He released Brix's arm and stepped back. The Villani commander scrambled to his feet. His shell was cracked in 3 places. His pride was cracked in 1,000 more. "This is war," Brix hissed. His voice shook with rage. "You have chosen death for your entire species." Tai-Ho wiped the blood from his chin with the back of his hand. He looked at the red stain for a moment. Then he looked back at Brix. "We did not choose this," he said. "But we will finish it." Cameras were still broadcasting. 1 trillion beings across the galaxy had just watched a human humiliate the Villani Empire. In that moment, everything changed. The old order cracked like the floor beneath Commander Brix, and something new began to rise. The galaxy would never be the same. The video spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Within 1 hour, 1 billion beings had watched it. Within 6 hours, that number became 100 billion. By the end of the day, it was not a single corner of known space where someone had not seen a human throw Commander Brix to the ground. On the Villani throne world, Empress Vela watched the video in silence. She was ancient, even by Villani standards. Her black shell had turned gray with age. She had ruled for 300 years. In all that time, no one had ever challenged her empire so directly. Her advisors stood around her, afraid to speak. The throne room was carved from a single piece of dark crystal. It was cold and beautiful and terrifying, just like the Empress herself. How many times has this been viewed? Vila asked. Her voice was soft like silk but sharp like a blade. 400 billion times and counting, Empress, one advisor said. His voice shook. Every species in the assembly has seen it. Many have watched it multiple times. Vila said nothing. She watched the video again. She watched the human catch Brix's arm. She watched him throw her best commander to the floor. She watched the small creature stand over the larger one with blood on his lips and fire in his eyes. This cannot stand, she finally said. Ready the fleet. 300 ships. We will burn their worlds until nothing remains but ash. The galaxy will learn what happens when insects bite the Villani. 10,000 light-years away, Admiral Junho received the news on his command ship, the ESS Resolve. He was 52 years old, with gray hair cut short and a face that had seen too many battles. He had served Earth for 30 years. He had hoped to retire in peace. That hope was now dead. 300 Villani warships, his second officer reported. They will reach our border in 72 hours. Junho looked at the star map that floated in the air before him. 300 red dots moved slowly toward a thin blue line. Behind that line were 12 human colony worlds. 40 million people. How many ships do we have? He asked 42, Admiral. If we call back everything from patrol and training, Junho nodded slowly. 42 against 300. Any other species would surrender. Any other species would beg for mercy. But Junho was human. And humans did not beg. Call them back, he said. All of them. And send a message to Earth. Tell them to activate the Alliance Protocol. The Alliance Protocol was something humans had built quietly over the past 12 years. While other species ignored them, humans had made friends. They had traded fairly. They had helped smaller species with their problems. They had asked for nothing in return except friendship now. Those friends would be asked to choose a side. On Station Varus, Tiho sat in a small room with Yuna. The station was in chaos. Diplomats from every species were rushing to leave before the war started. But Tiho stayed. He had work to do. His communication device buzzed. A face appeared on the screen. It was old and gray, with large dark eyes and a small mouth. Elder Tosk of the Renari. Ambassador Tiho, Tosk said. His voice was quiet and careful. What you did today was very dangerous. Was necessary, Tiho replied. Perhaps. Tosk was silent for a moment. The Renari have served the Villani for 1,000 years. We have given them our resources, our labor, our obedience. In return, they have given us nothing but suffering. I know, Tiho said. I have read your history. It is a tragedy. We have always believed that resistance was impossible, Tosk continued. The Villani are too strong. Fighting them means death. So we accepted our chains. We taught our children to accept them too. He paused. When he spoke again, his voice was different, stronger. But today I watched a human catch the arm of a Villani commander. I watched him fall. And I thought for the first time in my long life that perhaps we were wrong. Perhaps resistance is not impossible. Perhaps we simply needed someone to show us how. Tiho leaned forward. Elder Task, are you saying what I think you're saying? The Renari wish to help humanity, Tosk said. We have no warships. We have no weapons. But we have information. We know the Villani supply lines. We know their communication codes. We know where their armor is weak. 1,000 years of service has taught us many secrets. Tiho smiled. It was a warm smile this time. A grateful smile that is more valuable than 100 warships, he said. Thank you, Elder. On the S Resolve, a young officer named Hannah studied data screens that scrolled faster than most humans could read. She was 26 years old, small and thin, with quick eyes that never seemed to rest. She was the best intelligence officer in the fleet. Admiral, she said suddenly, I am intercepting Villani communications. They are not just planning to defeat us. They are planning to make an example. Civilian targets, colonies, they want to burn everything. Admiral Junho closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, they were hard as stone. Then we cannot let them reach our space, he said. We fight them, At the Kepler corridor. We hold them there, or we die trying. 42 ships against 300, Hannah said quietly. JUNHO smiled. It was the same smile Taiho had shown in the assembly hall, the smile of a species that did not know how to give up. I have read human history, Lieutenant Hannah, he said. We have faced worse odds before. At Thermopylae, at Rorke's Drift, at Stalingrad. We are still here. They are not. He turned to address his entire bridge crew. Send a message to all ships. Tell them what we face. Tell them the odds. And tell them that today we show the galaxy what humanity is made of. Across the stars, ships began to move. Humans prepared for war. And on a dozen worlds, species that had been slaves for centuries began to whisper a dangerous word. Rebellion. The ripple had become a wave. And the wave was about to become a storm. The Kepler corridor was a narrow path through space, where ships could travel faster than light. It was the only quick route to human territory. Any fleet that wanted to reach Earth's colonies had to pass through this corridor. Admiral Gunho knew this. So he waited there with his 42 ships and his impossible mission. The Villani fleet arrived like a dark cloud. 300 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel and filled the space before the corridor. Each ship was massive, covered in black armor and bristling with weapons. Together, they could destroy a planet. Commander Brix stood on the bridge of the largest vessel, his cracked shell now repaired, his wounded pride still burning. Scan the corridor, Brix ordered. 42 human ships, Commander, an officer reported. They are not retreating. Brix made a sound like grinding metal. It was his version of a laugh. 42, he repeated. They are either very brave or very stupid. It does not matter which. Destroy them. The Villani fleet moved forward. Their weapons began to charge. Energy built up along the hulls of their ships, glowing like angry stars. On the S-Resolve, Admiral Junho watched them come. His crew was silent. They knew the odds. They knew that by every measure of logic and military strategy, they should not be here. They should have run, but they were human, and humans had never been very good at running. All ships, Junho said calmly into his communication device. Execute Protocol Tempest. The human fleet scattered. Instead of forming battle lines like every other species did, the human ships broke apart into small groups of 3. They spread out in seemingly random patterns. To the Villani sensors, it looked like chaos. It looked like panic. It was neither protocol. Tempest was a battle strategy that humans had developed in secret. It was based on something very old. Long before humans reached space, they had fought wars on their home planet. They had learned that small groups of fighters could defeat large armies if they moved fast, struck hard, and never stayed in one place. They called it guerrilla warfare. The first Villani ship exploded without warning. A group of 3 human fighters had slipped through the fleet while the Villani were focused on the larger ships. They had targeted the reactor core with perfect accuracy. The massive warship cracked open like an egg and released a wave of fire into space. What happened? Brix shouted. Where did that attack come from? Before anyone could answer, 2 more explosions lit up the darkness. Then 5 more. Then 10. Human ships darted between the Villani cruisers like angry insects. They were too small to hit. They were too fast to track. And every time they attacked, something died. The Villani tried to respond. They fired their massive weapons into the chaos. But their guns were designed to fight other large ships in traditional battle lines. They could not turn fast enough to hit targets that moved like human fighters moved. They are not fighting like a proper fleet, a Villani officer said. His voice was confused and afraid. They are fighting like wild animals. Brix watched his ships burn. 20 gone. 30. 40. The humans had lost only 6. This is not possible, he whispered. But it was possible. It was happening. Because the Villani had never faced an enemy like humanity. They had conquered species that stood and fought in organized lines. Species that surrendered when the battle turned against them. Species that valued their lives more than their freedom. Humans were different. Humans had spent 10,000 years fighting each other before they ever reached the stars. They had invented every form of war imaginable. They had learned to win when winning should be impossible. While the battle raged, Lieutenant Hannah led a team of 5 humans toward the Villani command ship. Their small vessel was designed for stealth, painted black and running without lights. They attached to the hull of Brix's flagship like a spider on a wall. 5 of us against 2,000 Villani soldiers, one of her team members said. This is crazy. Yes, Hannah agreed. But we are human. Crazy is what we do. Cut through the hull and entered the ship. The Villani inside were not prepared for close combat. Their weapons were too large for the narrow hallways. Their bodies were too big to move quickly in tight spaces. Hannah and her team moved through them like ghosts, striking fast and disappearing before the enemy could respond. 18 minutes later, the lights on the Villani command ship went dark. Its weapons stopped firing. Its engines died. The flagship is disabled, Hannah reported through her communication device. We have control of their main communication system. Admiral Junho smiled. Patch me through to Ambassador Taiho. Seconds later, Taiho's voice was broadcasting to every ship in the battle, to every world in the galaxy, to every species watching the fight on their screens. This is Ambassador Taiho of Earth, he said. Humanity did not seek this war. We came in peace. We asked only for respect. The Villani Empire answered with violence. So now we answer with strength. Paused. When he spoke again, his voice was harder. To the Villani, your fleet is breaking. Your flagship has fallen. You can surrender now, or you can watch the rest of your ships burn. The choice is yours. Then his voice changed. It became warmer, full of promise. To every species under the Villani heel, every world that has known their cruelty, every people who have suffered their oppression, rise. Rise now. You are not alone anymore. Humanity stands with you. Across the battlefield, something amazing happened. 12 Villani ally ships suddenly turned their weapons around. The Groth, the Tovani, the Selek, species that had been forced to serve the Empire for centuries, they had heard Taiho's words. They had seen the humans fighting and winning. They chose freedom. The 300. Villani ships became 150 as their allies betrayed them. Then 80 as more ships fell to human attacks. Then 30 as the battle turned into a complete disaster. Commander Brix stood on a secondary ship now, watching his empire's pride burn around him. He remembered the human in the assembly hall. He remembered the smile. He remembered asking what a human would do. Now he knew. He whispered to the empty bridge. Nobody answered. There was no answer that made sense. The storm had broken, and the Villani Empire was drowning in it. The war ended 12 days after it began. The Villani Empire, which had ruled the galaxy for 30,000 years, sent a message asking for peace. Empress Vila herself spoke the words that her ancestors had never imagined saying, "We surrender." The message traveled across space to Admiral Junho's fleet, now 3 times larger than when the battle started. Former Villani subjects had joined humanity's side by the dozens. Ships that had once served the Empire now flew under new flags. The galaxy had changed overnight, but what happened next surprised everyone. Taiho stood before the Galactic Assembly once again. The Grand Assembly Hall was rebuilt now, the cracks in the floor repaired. But everything else was different. The Villani delegates sat in silence, their power broken. The smaller species sat tall in their chairs, no longer afraid. And every eye in the room was fixed on the human ambassador. The Villani Empire has surrendered, Taiho announced. Humanity has won this war. The hall was silent. Everyone expected what came next. Throughout galactic history, winners destroyed losers. They took their worlds, enslaved their people, erased their culture. That was how things worked. That was what power meant. Taiho continued speaking. Humanity does not want the Villani Empire. We do not want their worlds. We do not want their ships. We do not want their people as slaves. Confusion spread through the delegates. This made no sense to them. What we want is simple, Taiho said. We want justice. The Villani will release every species they have conquered. They will return every world they have stolen. They will pay for the damage they have caused, not to humanity, to the species they have harmed. He looked directly at the Villani delegates. They will never raise a hand to another species again. If they do, we will finish what we started. But if they choose peace, they will find that humanity can be a good friend. We do not hold hate in our hearts. We only ask that you become better than you were. The silence stretched for a long moment. Then, from the back of the hall, someone began to clap. It was Elder Task of the Renari. His small gray hands made soft sounds as they came together. Others joined him. The Grath the Tovani. The Selek, species that had been slaves for 1,000 years. They stood and clapped, and some of them cried. They were free. After generations of suffering, they were finally free. Elder Task walked slowly to the speaking platform. He was old, and his steps were difficult, but he refused help. When he reached the front, he turned to face the entire assembly. For 1,000 years, he said, my people believed that the strong ruled and the weak obeyed. We believed that power was everything. We believed that fighting against the powerful was suicide. So we bowed our heads. We accepted our chains. We taught our children to accept them too. His voice grew stronger. The humans have taught us something different. The strong do not only rule, the strong can also protect. The powerful do not only destroy, the powerful can also build. And the weak, when they stand together, are not weak at all. He turned to Taiho. On behalf of the Renari people, and on behalf of every species that has suffered under the Villani Empire, I thank you. Not for your ships, not for your weapons, but for showing us that a better galaxy is possible. 1 week later, Admiral Junho stood on the observation deck of Station Varus. The stars spread out before him like scattered diamonds. His uniform was perfect, his medals shining, but his eyes were tired. Wars did that to people, even wars that were won quickly. Hannah walked up beside him. She wore a new rank on her shoulders now. Captain Hannah, youngest captain in the history of Earth's fleet. You could have destroyed them completely, she said. We had the power. Why did we show mercy? Gunho thought about the question for a long time. Because mercy is harder than destruction, he finally said. Anyone can burn a world. It takes real strength to rebuild one. And because I hope that someday, when humanity makes a mistake, someone will show us the same mercy. He looked at her. We won this war. But the harder battle comes now. We have to prove that humanity deserves the trust the galaxy is placing in us. We have to be better than the Villani were. We have to be what we said we are. On Earth, people celebrated in the streets, but the celebrations were quiet. There were no parades, no bragging, no demands for glory. Humans knew that war was not something to celebrate. They honored their dead. They welcomed their soldiers home, and they got back to work because that was what humans did in a small room on Station Varus. Taiho sat with Yuno one last time before they returned to Earth. The room was quiet. The chaos of the past weeks had finally settled. Did you know? Yuna asked. When Brix slapped you in the assembly hall, did you know what would happen? Taiho touched his lip. The cut had healed, but he could still feel where the blow had landed. I knew who we are, he said slowly. I knew what humans have survived. Ice ages, plagues, wars that killed millions. We have been knocked down so many times that getting back up is part of our nature. I knew that if I showed the galaxy that humans do not bow, they would see us differently. And if it had failed? Taiho smiled. It was a sad smile, but a true one. Then I would have died standing. And that is not the worst way to go. Across the galaxy, species began studying human history. They read about ancient battles where small groups of humans held back massive armies. They read about humans who refused to surrender, even when surrender was the logical choice. They read about a species that had been fighting since the day it first stood upright, and had never learned how to quit, and they understood finally why the galaxy had trembled, The Vellani Empire had ruled through fear. They believed that strength was everything. But they had never faced a species like humanity, a species forged in fire, a species raised on a world that wanted them dead, a species that had looked at impossible odds for 10,000 years and said one simple word, no. The galaxy would remember the day a Vellani commander slapped a human ambassador. They would remember what happened in the 6 seconds that followed. And they would remember the lesson that day had taught them. Do not make enemies of humans. Because humans do not know how to lose. They only know how to survive. And they will survive you always.